In this video, we're going to talk about the internal dialogue that goes on your head while you're playing. What I mean by internal dialogue is what you think about yourself, what you are thinking of while you're playing cello. A lot of my students know that I say to them, stop thinking, just do. And so today I'm going to share with you some tips that you can use when it comes to dealing with this dialogue in your head. Here's my first tip. Make sure that when you approach cello in your practice, remove the words from your brain, I cannot. Remove the words from your mouth and from your dialogue, hard. The words cannot and hard are very difficult to overcome. They're like walls that simply are so high you can't traverse them. So I suggest to you to completely eliminate that. Instead of using the word I cannot, just simply say, this is a challenge. And instead of saying, this is hard, use the word, this is new. And by changing that dialogue in your mind, you're able to reprogram the brain into a receptive mode instead of sort of a defensive, maybe even rejective sort of mode. So tip number one, change those words hard and I cannot into new and challenge. It does work, believe me. Here's a tip number two for you. Be aware that when you get mad at something, that is something that can drive you. It can be a passion. It can be a fire it's like the flame underneath that pot that gets that water boiling. You want to get mad. You want to get angry. And if you don't get mad and angry, then you don't care enough. And you might as well just not care that much about cello. Maybe it's just not the piece you're connecting with, but at one point you will get angry, and it's a good thing to get that rage because it shows your passion and your drive to learn something. So I suggest to you to harness that rage to master. And when you do that, you're able to look at that partition, look at that passage, and play it until your fingers hurt and your neighbors are angry. But maybe after again and again of deep practice, you're able to get it. And the satisfaction you will get may not come soon, but it will come one day. Which comes to my tip number three for you. Cello. It can be frustrating and it can be rewarding, but whatever you think about cello is not something that is an instant gratification instrument. It is a challenge to learn, and it is a challenge to play. And so recognize the fact that this is going to not be a sprint, but a marathon. Regardless if it's 5K, 10K, or 40K, this is a marathon. Just enjoy the run, enjoy the moment, enjoy the journey. I want to share with you a story about a student of mine I had back in America. She was joining the studio and cello, completely new to music, in her very late 30s. And she just simply wanted to learn the instrument. She also had 2 teenage children. And let's just say that your family and them know, if you're beginning this instrument, they know the sounds that you make. It can be, well, interesting. One day, we were playing a Bach piece, and she played the C, which is the 4th finger. It's on the G, and it's, as you know, it's following after an open string. And she plays this note, and she stops, and she gets quite teary-eyed. She gets emotional. And I ask, are you okay? She's like, oh, I'm just thinking about the last time I played this. My teenage son usually takes the cue when he sees that cello and it's coming out. It says it's a cue for him to leave the room. But I played this Bach piece, and he sat there on his phone, but still sat there on the couch, and he didn't move a muscle. And after I finished playing, she said to me, he looked up at me and says, you know what, Mom? You've done something good here, because now when I see that thing coming out, I don't have to run out of the room. And by the way, that sounded kind of nice. And so that was a short moment, a very beautiful moment in her development as a musician. A beginning musician, but still a musician, because she was able to connect with her music, to see that her practice is paying off, and also enjoy a very short but very blissful moment in practice. So tip number 3, enjoy those small little moments. They're gifts and they're very nice. And the last tip I have for you is quite simply to stop thinking. Stop thinking. If you have started this instrument at a later age, you have a developed brain, you're very intelligent, but you're also going to overthink a lot of things. I suggest to you to just stop thinking. Realize that your practice of your scales, your etudes, and your songs is getting you somewhere, but don't overthink it. So when you get to practice, get to a moment where you are going to enjoy making that music. You should set a time every single week. It shouldn't all be practice. Have a friend come over and says, "May I play something for you?" And enjoy that moment. At that point, you're not thinking. You're thinking not about yourself or making good notes. You're an entertainer. You're thinking about entertaining your guests. And so you have to want it a lot. When I was recording the Massenet today, I did that. I realized that I wasn't able to connect with the music unless I stopped thinking and allowed my fingers to flow up and down the fingerboard. And I was able to play it quite nicely, and I hope you do agree. So the tip number 4 is to just stop thinking so much. I know there's a lot to deal with when it comes to cello, but this is something that you really have to do. Think about those athletes again. They're not thinking. We're having the Olympics right now, and the Winter Olympics in South Korea, and the best athletes, sometimes the difference between a gold or even standing on the podium and not is hundredths of a second. That hundredth of a second is a thought. And when you're playing your instrument, sliding between positions, just making sure that first finger comes down right on target, the less you have to think about that, the more you're going to sound better and enjoy the music that you're playing. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for joining Cello. Stick around because we're all going to learn a lot.